Burn the Box, a portal to the world of hidden truths and untapped power. A sanctuary where together we unmask the oppression hidden in the shadows far too long. Unscripted, unplanned, unrehearsed. Stay tuned for powerful conversations, thought-provoking insights as we ignite the sacred rebellion of the global majority. Let's begin this incredible journey together. Welcome to Burn the Box. Your host, Dr. Sonali Deepika.
Welcome to another episode of Burn the Box. Today, I have my beautiful friend and colleague, Nat Vikitsreth, known as Nat, who I've had such a pleasure to actually meet in person in Chicago when I was visiting. So welcome, Nat.
Thank you, Sonali, for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'd love to know what's alive for you around this whole concept of burning boxes, expanding out of places that feel constricted and contracted, or anything really that.
For me, it's that richness of my exhale when I see myself stopping contorting my body to fit into a tiny box of social identity, whether that is the Asian identity, the immigrant identity, the gender identity of trans experience. And I can just burn all of them and let that fire alchemize my oppression into my liberation. And I can just expand and take up that space.
Oh, thank you. Please call that. I felt what came through was the full permission that you've given yourself to burn all those boxes, to be who you are, to express your true essence in the way that you choose. It doesn't fit into any one of probably so many boxes, but the three that you mentioned, especially.
Yes. Yes. It feels good to share that with you. Thank you for asking.
I'm curious if there's one of these boxes that's really feeling very present right now, or maybe it was the hardest one to navigate, or what comes through about these three boxes?
Yeah. I feel like I'm happy to burn them down at any moment. Gladly. Gladly ready to do it. But I also have in my purse backup boxes just in case I need to put myself back in those boxes for safety.
Yes.
Where I might have to put myself in the trans women box and use my cisgender passing privilege to appear very feminine, very pretty, to be and be perceived as non-threatening to the person in front of me. So when I need to protect myself, to code switch and stay alive, I'll just go back to my backup box. But when I feel safe enough and connected enough with the person that I'm with, like you right now, I could just put my backup box in my purse and just be me.
Well, that you're speaking to that we can have the backup boxes, that we can choose when we don't even want to, but when we need to, when we have to, when it's about survival, when it's about protecting ourselves when we need like that extra armor, extra like buffer there. We can choose it, but then we can put it away because we want it burned.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because when I was a young trans woman, my life was all about what would I wear that morning to look feminine, what lipstick color, how I'm going to wear my eyeliner. And that was all my life was. And I don't want my life to be just about the lipstick color and what mascara to wear. I want to live. Right.
Yes.
So the ability to be able to put the box back and put myself back in it, and like you said, choosing that just that feels really good.
Yeah, there is a spaciousness about that, an expansiveness, and an aspect of liberation where we can sometimes choose to go back into the box or to present in a certain way when it best serves us, but to know that we are not that box or that we don't belong in that box, well, that we're so much bigger.
Oh, yes. When I work with parents to weave in social justice action into their day-to-day parenting, we always talk about that contortion that we all have to do as a part of our survival strategy. Yet surviving, it's not all of who we are. We are so much more.
Yes, so much of our, like what comes with these boxes, the conditioning and the defenses that we have created out of need for survival, out of self-protection. So much of that, it's just so good to know that we can choose, that we don't have to have all of that. We don't have to live in that way, that there is a choice, that there is discernment.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like I just had a conversation with a close friend that, we're so quick to label. Oh, that person is so anxious. That person is depressed. And then that's the end of the journey. And we forget that, oh my gosh, that label gets so decontextualized. There's so much more about why that person has to use that anxiety as protection or survival strategy.
Yeah.
And what's the totality of the humanity of that person? It's so much more than that anxiety, so much more than that label. Right? Yeah.
As you're sharing, what was coming to me is the layers, right? The depth and the what we uncover when we peel back layers or go to excavate these aspects of it. Yes, anxiety is a surface thing. It's something that showed up in response to who knows how many different experiences and what's happened with our nervous system, what's happened with our defenses. And also what you referred to earlier about the lipstick color and stuff like that. What people see and was something to reflect how you wanted to appear, but there's so much more through that whole experience that was like just the surface.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm curious a bit more about the work that you're doing with that you mentioned social activism and parents.
Thank you for that curiosity, Sonali.
Because it does sound like that's burning boxes in a way with these parents.
Yes. The imagery that's coming to me, it's I hand each family a box of matches and a little bottle of kerosene. And I'm just like, here you go. It's a gift. Burn your boxes when it's safe. So that's
I love that. Yes. Yes. I love that. You have permission to burn your boxes.
Yes. Yes. Here you go. But it started in 2007, I was back home in Thailand, and I was working on the street as a sex worker with my trans sex worker colleagues at the time. And we started socially organizing to protect ourselves and for safety. Looking back right now, knowing more about social justice, we were practicing harm reduction and transformative justice before we knew what those terms were.
Yeah. Before there were any boxes for those. So it's just like you were doing it.
Yes. We found ways to keep ourselves protected, safe, and connected. Then I started working with parents and children, mostly children on the spectrum. And I just love it. I feel like in the children on the spectrum that I was working with, I get to see different aspects of their behaviors that were often misunderstood. And I got to really be curious about, what are you communicating and what are your unmet needs right now underneath the hand flapping, underneath all the humming, right? That their parents did not understand. And then there's tension there. And I got to be the children's advocate, supporting parents to understand who their children were underneath all of the behaviors. And that's when I fell in love.
Yeah.
And mostly, Sonali, to be honest, I think supporting parents to love their children when they didn't fully understand their children just yet. Like I saw parts of myself in those children that I was not ready to love. Like parts that were too much, too masculine, too different. And supporting parents to love those parts in their children, like I got to, like you said, have that permission. I think that's what it was, to love parts of myself too.
That's so tender.
Thank you. I feel it in my chest. Yeah. Yeah. I feel the warmth. Yeah.
I was feeling an expansion. I was feeling tears in my eyes. And I was feeling like, and we each do that for ourselves. Like really go to be curious and to look, to witness, and to see if we can love like all these different parts of ourselves, right?
Yes. Yes. Just witnessing how they love their children in their own ways.
Now it's making me curious because I was looking at some of your work, like through your Instagram. I became very curious about this reparenting, like a social, was it social justice reparenting or social, it was a reparenting, something of that nature that I saw. And I was like, I'm really curious about that, the reparenting. And as you're mentioning now, like how this came from that parenting of children on the spectrum who do have behaviors that are not accepted and are not conventional. They're not acting the way we think a child should be acting. Yeah, I'm really curious about how this, if you could speak to that a little bit, or how this evolved, because it does feel really tender, and how that allowed you to look at parts of yourself. And the reaction I had, because clearly there are parts of myself too.
Yeah,
I'm like, Oh.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's when I started to see that, oh my gosh, people who are raising children, in addition to surviving, they have to do so much of their own healing at the same time. And I'm just so in awe by how much love they put into their children and in exchange into their own inner children. Right? Like parts of themselves that they had to leave behind to blend in and belong in their family. People raising children are at such pivotal, dare I say, strategic point in their journey to heal and become whole again. And to take a step further to practice social justice and model that to their children. Like, who would have a better fertile ground to plant seeds of social justice in the next generations than those who are with children? I'm humbled, deeply humbled, Sonali, to support parents and caregivers to do this work. I owe it to the disability justice movements who taught me to respect the mad, the crippled, the disabled, and not just stop there, but to really kick ableism in the butt and see that those quote unquote non-desirable or undesirable bodies are not disposable. They can be a beautiful portal for our healing. And I owe it to transformative justice for sure. And weaving that into my work, it's everything. I hear my ancestor says, it's about time.
Yes.
I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yes. Hearing you share about your work and how you've allowed yourself, like, start somewhere with these children to allow that to impact you, with their parents, to look at parenting in such, like, I want to say beautiful, but it's also like a truly transformative process. If the parent can really engage in what's happening between them and the children. And this, as I say this, it's like I'm brought back to my previous life when I was in Chicago working with a lot of children and families, because I don't have children myself. But it is, if a parent is open to allowing their child and everything that comes out with that child, which is challenging and testing and triggering and like all those things, if they can stay with that and be curious about their own process and allow themselves to change and shift and look at what they're holding, what they have brought to this, it's so powerful.
It is. It really is. And it's so juicy and complex and nuanced and challenging. And I love every second of it. And you're right that I just want to ground it in reality. Like I talked about the intentionality behind the work. It's what my ancestors want me to do. But at the same time, the parents that I work with, they tell me that, okay, Nat, it's all beautiful. I want to do it. And I have 5 minutes waiting for my child to finish pooping on the toilet. So what social justice action can I do? So they have limited time, big intention, right? And sometimes limited resources, but we get it done. We peel those layers. We get to the root of it. We talk about capitalism and colonialism and white supremacy and patriarchy, shaping how you're parenting your child. And slowly we unlearn. We drop into the body. We notice different cues and we do it 5 minutes at a time while their kids are pooping. We do it.
Oh my God. for anyone who thinks that change isn't possible or social justice isn't, they don't have time or something like what you just shared, there's time. You got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You got 5 minutes while you might be pooping yourself.
Exactly. Like we find possibilities together. We struggle together and we find hope together in this like tiny daily practice of social justice in the home, Sonali. Like I see parents turn on the news and they're stuck in that freeze mode of holy, I don't know if I can swear in your podcast.
Yes, go
like,
ahead.
Holy shit. Like I'm raising my kids during this racial awakening, pandemic, climate apocalypse, violence everywhere. And they're in this freeze state. And these tiny actions get them to mobilize and metabolize whatever's stuck. And then they get to see, oh, it's manageable. That a simple act of shifting from power over to power with my child, right? Or with myself first, and telling my child that, you know what, I see you and I hear you, but I just need 3 seconds to take one full breath because I'm about to pop off. Do you want to do that with me? If not, just give me 3 seconds. Then we can go fix your dinner. Right? That's being your own self ally.
Yes.
That's modeling to your child how to not be a savior, but how to be in solidarity with yourself. And that little action, Sonali, it's what keeps us going and what keeps parents in my community going.
I was just talking to another coach and someone I just connected with on Instagram, an Indian coach who does like yoga, Ayurveda. And we just said one of those things, most of social media, I'm not like usually into. I mean, I'm there, but like I love when you can connect. You know, that's fun to me. And we went back and forth because she had some questions, the work she's doing and things like that. But this concept came up when it comes to making change, which is what you're giving examples of, that I had learned from another teacher some years ago from Japan. Like it's a Japanese concept of kaizen, like making the small, there's a big change. Okay, if that big change may be like, there's so much, it's so hard to make a big change. I'll just give a simple example of, I'm waking up in the morning at 8, but I want to wake up at 6. But my gosh, that's like a huge change. So the Kaizen idea would be like, okay, we'll wake up at 7:45, start there. And I'm just hearing that concept and what you're doing with these parents, because it's like, change is possible. Change is available. And like with social justice, which is huge, you can do it in these little pieces.
Yes. I often think of Tony Kate Bambera always when they talk about making the revolution irresistible, right? And it's irresistible and juicy and yummy in these tiny steps, but very potent and very intentional. Like our teacher, Resma Menachem, talks about getting those reps in. I talk about that I talk about it with parents all the time. And you can tell that I don't work out because I do reps like this. Yeah. It's in those little things, right?
Things. I love that you're teaching that, and then you're getting to see the change that's happening, the impact that's happening to do these small things. Is there any example of that you can share in a family, maybe?
Definitely.
I know, I'm just testing that, putting on the spot, but it's just, I'm curious.
Yeah. I can share that right now. And to your listeners, I promise I'm not saying this to buy time for me to find the answer for Sonali and you. I feel the pressure to like in the front part of my body to like perform and pick the perfect example to showcase my work, to share with you that I'm legit and valid. So
thank you for naming that. Yes.
Exactly. And I have to sink back into my seat a little, bouncing on my seat just to feel my sits bone on the chair and remind myself that, you know what? I trust that whichever family comes to my mind, and they're coming, right? It's the right one for this moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're talking about these little changes, these 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. So anyone that you're working with will be next time.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a dad that I used to work with in my 7-week social justice parenting and inner child reparenting program. And he's just exquisite in his awareness. He's beginning to name little things that he's noticing in his body. He feels the urgency as like heat in the back of his neck when the words that are about to come out of his mouth was, "You must," to his toddlers. "You must clean up after eating dinner. You must go to bed at this time and have a bedtime routine. You must." And once he begins to notice like the little bodily cues leading up to "you must," which holds so much urgency and pressure and charge, like that gives him a cue to work with me and pause and be curious. Where did that "you must" come from? And he's okay. I grew up in a very strict household, and there were rules that as a child I needed to follow. So I want to pass that on. I'm like, okay, great. What else? And then we reflected back, where do you think your parents got these rules from in their generation? And if we think about the broader social political context, and he was able to reflect, oh, they grew up in the Jim Crow era in the Deep South. So these rules that centered obedience and compliance were there to make sure that everyone in the family was protected and safe from racism as much as it could be. And racism is still here. And we could reflect together that, oh, so there's the real intergenerational family need to prepare and protect your children, your little toddlers. How do you want to do it now that you get to write your own parenting script? And he said, you know what? I'm going to keep the "you must" because that's important. But I want to add my own flavor to this script of parenting that I'm rewriting. I want to make sure that my 2 toddlers know that I'm not just here enforcing rules. But when they're sad, I want to tell them that, oh, if I were you and I couldn't eat ice cream during dinner, I would feel sad too. Something that he didn't get to hear from his parents, but he wanted to break the cycles, right, and make it his own way. So the little things, Sonali, in this example was starting from noticing some cues in the body as a way to pause and reflect on the intergenerational family patterns and perhaps internalized oppression wounds. Yeah. And start to heal those wounds, rewrite some family scripts, and find ways to realign this dad's parenting with his own values. Yeah.
That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for holding space. Yeah.
I just suddenly had this, I've left. I'm not going back also to my former career. But if I were in that, I would love to, it would be so beautiful to collaborate. This is the work that you're doing. It's so like healing of the intergenerational trauma. It's like taking it to a somewhat appears small, but it's like really huge to to guide a parent to slow down enough to witness and have an awareness of, oh, this was what was coming because that came from my parents and probably their parents. It came down this way. And I have that power to be able to shift like that gift to the children, not having to hold all of that most of us have.
Yes. Yes. And like the 15 years of doing this work, Sonali, I feel like we want to prepare and protect our children. The ways that we had to overlearn when we were little, how to prepare and protect ourselves from our caregivers' rejection, humiliation, criticism, right? And also racism, oppression, all the isms, you name it. And sometimes it comes across as you must obey and do as I said. And I feel like the honor of my work is simply holding the mirror for parents to see, oh my gosh, you love your child so much, so much. And I wonder if we can find a way for you to love your child from the scar and not from the wound.
I feel there's something that comes up of it is like a joy. It is again like heart centered and expansive, but a joy that I feel for all these parents you're working with, everyone who's getting your lived experience, including all the somatic abolitionism journey that we've been on.
Yes. I feel excited, Sonali. Like, how can I not love the parents I'm working with, right? Like, they're raising their kids in a pandemic and with all the uprisings and all of that. And oh my gosh. Yeah, it's an honor to be a trans auntie in the village and supporting them.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. The village, yes.
Yeah. And the somatic abolitionism piece that you just mentioned. Wow. To hold space for parents to just connect with their body for 3 seconds and then shake it off. Right. Now we do it in small bites. That was so transformative. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed getting to meet you in person, and I really enjoy getting to connect here. And I'd love for you to share where people can find you, and if there's anything you want to share about your work that you're offering to invite them to.
Thank you, Sonali, for asking. All of my information is at comebacktocare.com, including the 7-week program that I hold and do online with a small cohort of social justice curious families. And also my Come Back to Care podcast, where I talk about social justice, reparenting inner child, apply to parenting and social justice organizing. It's really fun.
Yeah. I love that. And we'll have all of your information in our show notes. But yeah, I'm so glad you got to just to share that so anyone who's listening to be able to get it.
Thank you, Sonali, for holding space and for your curiosity and kindness and reflecting it back. What I do and what I embody. I wish everybody had that person to reflect back and hold that little mirror, right? Like, look at your own divinity and beauty. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And just an awareness that you're doing that for so many people as well. It's beautiful. It is a way of allowing people to see their expansiveness and that they don't fit into. We can choose to fit in boxes, like we said, but they're not in a box. Their essence is far bigger.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Sonali. So much fun burning boxes and
Yes.
doing all of that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the Burn the Box movement.